watching Businessworld Live. I'm Danie, Laurel.
And I'm Jess Delos Santos. Here are the biggest stories to kickstart this trading day, Wednesday. Despite lingering inflationary pressures and external risks, incoming NEDA Chief Arsenio Balisacan is optimistic that the domestic economy will grow by around 6% this year.
The Finance Department warns against cutting infrastructure spending, saying this will hurt recovery. The agency bags a multi-billion peso loan from China for the Davao-Samal Connector project.
Domino effect, the deepening slump in Bitcoin prompts a U.S. cryptocurrency company to lay off almost a fifth of its workforce.
And 2021 proved to be a banner year for PLDT, with the telco reporting an all-time high revenue of more than 180 billion pesos. We begin our broadcast with the Finance Department cautioning against reducing infrastructure spending.
Agency says such move may do more harm than good. DOF Chief Economist Gil Beltran says that while cutting infrastructure spending could narrow the budget deficit in the short term, it may harm economic recovery and industrial competitiveness in the long term. The incoming Marcos Jr. administration has already signaled that it will continue the Duterte administration's infrastructure program. And just a couple of weeks before President Duterte finishes his 6-year term, China has extended a 17.39 billion peso loan to the Philippine government for the Davao-Samal Bridge. This Chinese financing will fund 90% of the project's design and build contract. Now, incoming Socioeconomic Planning Secretary Arsenio Balisacan is confident that the economy will expand by 6% this year, despite headwinds that would likely affect growth. Recall that last month, the Cabinet-level Development and Budget Coordination Committee has lowered the GDP growth target to 7 to 8% for 2022. That's from 7 to 9% previously. But in an interview with Bloomberg, Balisacan admitted that the country may not even be able to achieve at least 7% growth. Balisacan attributes this to inflationary pressures brought about by the impact of the Russia-Ukraine war, the economic slowdown in China, and monetary policy tightening in the United States.
We are still confident that we'll achieve 6% growth, and that already takes into account the current problems in the global and domestic markets.
As NEDA Chief, Balisacan vows to take measures to boost economic recovery. He also reiterates that the incoming Marcos administration will continue the Duterte administration's flagship infrastructure projects.
The goal is to rapidly ramp up our economic recovery while living with the slight peak, in prices. We'll have to improve our capacity to address supply bottlenecks. We'll need to work closely with our trading partners, make sure that we'll have the access to food supply in particular, and basic inputs needed for our manufacturing and other industries.
Cryptocurrency company Coinbase will be laying off 18% of its workforce in another sign of a worsening crypto downturn. Sonali Basak has more on Bloomberg Markets.
Just a week ago, we published a story with Adina Friedman, the CEO of NASDAQ, saying one day we have the technology that exists for every asset in the world to be digital. And so you have to wonder, with what's going on in crypto right now and the shakeout you're seeing, some of these projects just won't exist. A lot of these lending protocols can come under serious regulatory scrutiny. But if every asset in the world can be digitized one day, then what are the types of projects that make it through today? And I think that's where a lot of people are placing their bets. At some point, it's like any other market. When there's capitulation, the number of people who are still in the market might have some winning bets here.
But in terms of the Wall Street problem, and they were like bleeding workers, and they have to be really competitive now, do those people then go back to Wall Street, and does that kind of ease the labor tension there a little bit? The other story about crypto in the last 24 hours was the liquidity issue. I read some stuff about margin loan calls, et cetera. What are you hearing on that front?
Yeah, and that story in particular is in relation to MicroStrategy, because the firm's president in May said that Bitcoin needs to be cut in half to around 21,000 before we'd have a margin call. Again, they can still avoid that. I think something else that's interesting is more firms and certain specific Bitcoin lending firms have taken Bitcoin as collateral. So what does that mean when Bitcoin is plunging so aggressively? How much more do you have to post in that kind of scenario? And how much does that model continue on? Will other banks start adopting it if they can make it through this really significant downturn?
Sonali, you talk to a lot of people on Wall Street. What are you hearing? Yesterday felt like a day when liquidity pockets started to appear. We saw liquidity drying up. What are you hearing about what's going on trading desks?
I think one thing that's really interesting, Guy, because liquidity has really been the hot button issue here. Who is going to step in to make markets when the market just is so different than it was 10 years ago? Remember when Jamie Dimon had made that hurricane warning? The other thing he said at that time was that he was worried that, you could see in 2008 type forced selling issue here, and the banks aren't around this time in the same way they were in 2008. They are just different in terms of what their scope is. What I hear from investors, talking to a very large credit investor last week that was saying that the depth of the market was just very narrow. There weren't a lot of buyers by number, and a lot of them are still not ready to get in yet. They expect that spreads might widen further later this year. You're not seeing it a lot right now, partially because issuance has been down so much. So let's see if that turns out to be true.
All right, Diane, the worst fears of the crypto believers seem to have come to the fore. Tell us how Bitcoin is faring today.
All right, Jess. Well, very, very topsy-turvy. Earlier this morning, just 10 minutes ago, actually, it was in the red. But now it seems to be the case that it's slightly going above 22,000 levels. So earlier, just 10 minutes ago, it was around 10,000 levels. But nevertheless, dangerously, in the past 3 days, lost around 19.5% of its value and basically has halved already. This, according to Nuveen, it's now trading like a penny stock. Another one, Glassnode, which is an analyst of Bitcoin, says this is barely above the cost, and it calls it the deepest and darkest phase of Bitcoin. Now, they say that the realized price, which is the real value, the intrinsic value, is a little above $23,000, and it's now still below that, around $1,000 below that intrinsic price. Another thing that they're monitoring is the Bitcoin miners. Of course, these are under pressure because of the high energy costs, of course, related again to the Ukraine-Russia war, which is increasing, of course, the oil prices and energy costs there. And, of course, Bitcoin has fallen. I'm just going to pull out the one-month chart for you guys. 30% this month alone. That's on the 8th straight day of losses, the starkest drop in its history. Now, here to tell us why this is all happening and, of course, what to expect, especially for Filipino investors who are looking at cryptocurrency, we have with us Nichel Gaba. He is the CEO of PDAX. Good morning, Nichel.
Good morning, Danie and Jester.
Nichel, million-dollar question. Why this? Why now? Is this temporary?
It might be billions of dollars worth of a question there. This crypto bear market, I think, is brought about really by a confluence of factors. Maybe the biggest story here is the inflation environment creating changes in macroeconomic policy. I don't think we've seen inflation this high, 8% in the U.S. It's been the highest for the past 40 years, and we're likely going to see the Fed raise rates a little bit more to combat inflation. Unfortunately, they seem to be between a rock and a hard place here. Either they fight inflation now by raising rates, but obviously the downside is that markets will probably continue to decline, and not just in crypto, but we're also seeing maybe not as much in percentage terms, but similar destructions of value in other markets and asset classes.
All right, so it's not really the time to be, risk on right now. But tell us, is there any catalyst that we can see in the near term that might at least put a support level to what has happened to be halving of the value of this cryptocurrency?
Right. So Bitcoin had declined about 60+% since its all-time high. Ether's value has declined maybe about 70%. Now, in the immediate term, I think the clearest sign of a recovery will actually come from the inflation figures coming out of the U.S. Right? If the Fed gains some comfort that inflation is under control, we could see a loosening up of monetary policy and federal funds rate, target funds rate going to go down, resulting in higher asset prices everywhere. Absent that, we could also look towards historically, crypto market cycles have enjoyed a 4-year cycle following Bitcoin halving. What's that? So that's when the supply of Bitcoin gets cut in half. We probably won't see increases along those lines for maybe about 6 to 12 months. So we're in for a long winter, shall we say.
Quickly here, like you mentioned earlier, you have a confluence of factors here. How worried should we be of the market conditions here for crypto? You have other factors. For example, you have Celsius at least laying off employees, halting withdrawals, and at the same time Coinbase laying off employees here. Should we be expecting further fallout here?
That's an interesting question, Jester. It's really a function of how much funding a lot of these crypto companies have going into winter. The crypto industry is no different from any other industry where in the event of such a downturn, it's going to be very difficult for companies to raise capital. And I think Coinbase and other firms that have laid off people are just taking the bitter medicine now of saving some capital, cutting costs, preparing themselves for a long winter. But probably with the fallout of the crypto lending firms, there's too much uncertainty over the systemic risks. And that's probably the biggest downside of a decentralized financial market, right? There's no institution that's expected to prop up everything. And right now, the sense is that there's too much uncertainty over systemic risks. And so people are less likely to allocate more towards crypto at this point, even if these are historically really low prices that we're seeing.
Nichel, just a quick question on what you mentioned earlier on, just to follow up on that. Bitcoin in particular is still linked to a finite asset, right, which is mining, and some even compare it to gold. There's an intrinsic value here. Some are saying that's $23,000. Can you say with at least some level of confidence that we're not really going to go well below that level naman?
So I suppose the confidence there, Danie, can come from the fact that 20K was the previous all-time high.
Okay.
And it's very natural for market participants to see that as the next support level in light of this big crash. Bitcoin is finite. Bitcoin is highly decentralized. So many people have and trade Bitcoin. So you could make the argument that what we're seeing here is just a mere reflection of the reduction in supply of capital. And when you take money out of anything, all the prices come down anyway, right? So the view there could be that if you're a holder of Bitcoin, hopefully you don't have to sell in the next couple of years and just ride out this wave.
Okay. Go ahead, Jess.
Now, Nichel, when is the right time to buy the dip here? And what signs are we looking for to say that we are really here already at a crypto bottom here? And what assurance can we give investors, that should there be any form of reprieve here, that it's not going to be temporary?
Jess, the term buy the dip has been very popular among crypto investors because we're so familiar with volatility. But I think the difference with this particular dip or crash, shall we say, is that it's happening in an environment where interest rates are going up. We've enjoyed historically low interest rates for the past decade or so, and that's when that's an environment where crypto typically bounces back quickly. So it's very difficult to really make the decision to buy the quote unquote dip, no, or to even buy the crash, just because we don't know the time horizon of any potential bounce. So not making any, I guess, financial advice or recommendations here. But if you have a very long-term view, then what you could be seeing are prices that are going to be very low in hindsight.
Nichel, is this slump isolated to Bitcoin and say, specific cryptocurrencies, or are you expecting, a confluence of events this might spill over into even companies that hold Bitcoin or those that are using this kind of technology in their operations?
Oh, absolutely, Danie. So Bitcoin, we probably talk about Bitcoin a lot as an indicator. But you're seeing value destruction everywhere in the crypto space right now. NFTs are down massively. Play to earn, obviously, which depends on NFTs for its value, are also down. Companies like exchanges probably fare better than most because in times of volatility, there remains to be a lot of trading. But companies that are holding sizable amounts of crypto for short-term gains, or companies that are building at the protocol level, developing new protocols, new blockchains, most will probably struggle, right? And that's not an indictment of future potential. It's just a reflection of the fact that in this environment, it's very difficult to raise money when you need to start paying employees fixed salaries every month.
All right, and of course, Bitcoin is not the only one suffering a slump here, as equity markets all over the world and even emerging markets are bearing the brunt of all of these external factors. Thank you so much for that update. That was, of course, Nichel Gaba, PDAX CEO.
Now, pausing for a quick break, but coming right up after that. Villar-led Vista REIT debuts on the local bourse today.
More of that and other stories when Business World Live returns. Stay with us.
And you're still watching Business World Live here on One News. I'm Jess De Los Santos.
And I'm Danie, Laurel.
Now, 2021 turned out to be a banner year for PLDT, the country's largest telco. Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez breaks down the numbers.
2021 was a record-breaking year for PLDT. At its annual stockholders meeting, PLDT executives talked about ending the prior year with an all-time high revenue of 182.1 billion pesos despite lingering challenges from the pandemic.
PLDT home subscribers base growth of 30% as we exceeded targets and connected over 1.1 million new fiber customers with nearly 3 million total fixed broadband subscribers.
The company enjoyed strong growth across across the board, particularly in its fiber-to-home and broadband businesses. Meanwhile, PLDT's Voyager, the parent of fintech app Maya, attained what they call Unicorn Plus status, meaning it's valued at more than $1 billion now.
Voyager successfully raised $210 million in new funds to expand the financial services ecosystem of Maya. The company will use the new funds to launch Maya Bank services such as savings and credit.
Maya now has over 63,000 centers in various communities for people to cash in and out, send money, and make payments. Panlilio was asked about the impact of the amendments to the Public Service Act, which now allow 100% foreign ownership of telcos.
It doesn't change our North Star. I think at the end of the day, it will be a customer choice who offers them the best service, and that's what we aim for.
The publicly listed telco is aiming for single-digit growth this year. Although the economy has reopened, it now says it's facing new challenges such as rising inflation. There's also increased competition by the entry of Elon Musk's satellite company, but Panlilio says they remain unfazed.
Our goal has been to drive PLDT to further success as a customer-centric and leading-edge technology.
Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez, We Are One News.
All right, Dan, how are telco players faring on the back of that PLDT report?
Okay, Jess, well, very quickly here, you've got our two incumbents actually not moving much. So you've got PLDT down by 0.05% and Globe unchanged. Dito, meanwhile, down by 0.3%, and Converge down by 0.2% this morning, Jess.
And then another day, another debut. We welcome Vista REIT to the virtual trading floor today. Tell us more.
All right. Well, exciting times. Vista REIT, of course, that's the flagship office and mall REIT of Vista Land, did make its market debut at 9:30 a.m. That's after it completed an IPO. They raised around 4.8 billion pesos. However, that IPO was priced at 1.75 pesos per share, and you can see that going down a touch, it actually went quite lower to 1.61 per share. Now it's hovering at around 1 peso and 70 centavos per share. So we'll see how the rest of the trading day will go for this newcomer. Meanwhile, let's take a quick peek at our other REITs here and how those are moving. Of course, you know, their investors are going to be comparing these to the likes of Philert. That is, of course, Philinvest REIT, that's down by 0.3%. A-REIT, which is up by 1%. Robinsons REIT is flat, and Mega World is up by 1.5%. And finally, just to end our market report, let's take a look at how our index is performing now. Not too good of a picture. Our composite down by 0.6% after we had already, had some hope. Yesterday, we ended in the green. That did not last long. We are back to 64.37 levels. Only properties seem to be shining this morning, up by 0.6%. Holding firms, a gauge of our general economy, and the fundamentals down by a hefty 1.4%. Of course, markets are jittery all over the world. Today is the Fed meeting over in the U.S., and they're expected to deliver another hefty interest rate hike. Traders are anticipating a 75 basis points hike from the Fed today. That's going to be the biggest since 1994. So a lot of things to be watching out for, Jess, in the equity space.
Now, the health department says NCR may once again be placed under alert level 2 if the current week surge results in higher hospital admission rates. Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro gives us the front seat to the story.
While the uptick in COVID-19 cases is not yet a cause for concern, the Octa Research Group is flagging that the country is already experiencing a weak surge.
Yeah, we could already consider it a weak surge, but the concern is it might be getting stronger.
At the center of the surge is the National Capital Region. The health department has already floated the possibility of NCR going back to alert level 2.
At the minimum, baka kailanganin ng government na bawasan yung capacities sa public transportation or sa indoor establishments para lang at least lumuwag na konti.
Infectious diseases expert Dr. Ranjin Salante agrees. It's been almost 4 months since NCR was last placed on under Alert Level 2. Back then, daily cases ranged from 1 to 2,000 nationwide. By next week, David foresees NCR to be at moderate risk. He projects daily cases to reach 500 by the end of the month and 3,000 nationwide.
We might escalate the alert level, like the Department of Health is saying, so that's possible. Pero we don't foresee a lockdown.
But Solante and David agreed on another point. Even if cases peak, the situation will still be manageable. Considering, however, that restrictions will be a blow to the economy, the experts have one reminder: 2 years after the pandemic, personal responsibility is a must. Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro, we are One News.
Now, the COVID-19 positivity rate in Metro Manila jumped to 4% as of yesterday. That is according to the Octa Research Group, who also projected the detection of around 250 new cases in NCR and up to 500 new cases across the country for today, June 15th. Now, on Tuesday, the Health Department reported 257 new cases in the country. That's higher than the forecast of 230 cases. Now, despite these numbers, the Private Hospitals Association of the Philippines says the COVID-19 situation in the Philippines remains manageable. Association President Dr. Jose de Grano said their COVID wards are prepared for a possible surge.
Yes, the COVID wards are actually separated from the non-COVID wards. And they are prepared or ready anytime po na nagkaroon tayo ng surge in cases of COVID. The only problem that we might encounter is the number of nurses and the healthcare workers. Yun po.
Meanwhile, several transport groups have staged a protest in Quezon City over what they say is the government's inaction to help them cope with soaring pump prices. Mon Gualvez with the details.
Jeepney drivers rattled plastic bottles filled with coins and lay down on the street to express their dismay over the supposed inaction of the government. They are pushing to junk the oil deregulation law and to have fuel excise taxes and VAT suspended.
Tayo ay may supply na 3 to 6 months. Kaya kahit anong galaw sa international market, dapat hindi siya automatic na gumagalaw dito sa ating bansa.
They also complain about the tedious process of availing the 6,500 peso fuel subsidy. Some drivers claim that they were not included in the list of beneficiaries even if they have legitimate franchises. Because of this, some drivers are planning to stop going on trips and return to their provinces.
96 lang, ayoko na. Saan gagawin mo? Tatanim na akong gulay. Gulay Bulacan? Oo. Total, tagulan na. Pwede na magtanim.
Transport Group Manibela is now appealing for a 12 to 14 peso minimum fare. LTFRB is scheduled to deliberate on the matter on June 28.
Mas mahirap po kung hindi po kami makakabiyahe at hindi po tayo makakapagatid ng serbisyo sa kanila kung kulang po yung aming kinakargang diesel.
Higher pump prices has also affected vehicle volume in major thoroughfares. In EDSA alone, more than 6% of the normal vehicle volume had been slashed.
Ini-expect namin na mas mababawasan pa yan dahil nga from June 9 hanggang ngayon ay malaki pa rin yung itinaas ng presyo ng petrolyo.
For News 5, Mon Gualvez, we are One News.
All right, what problem to pick there, Dan? You have COVID cases surging, at least a noted uptick here, a weak surge as they say. And then on the other hand, you have soaring pump prices. Transport sector, at least bearing the brunt of those dilemma.
Exactly. So budget muna, Jess. Tighten our belts there and hope for things to pass quickly.
All right, and that's a first look into the business day this Wednesday, June 15, 2022. Join us again tomorrow at exactly 9:30 a.m. You can also catch us on Signal Play. Register for a free account now at www.signalplay.com and stream One News Live anytime, anywhere. I'm Jess De Los Santos.
And I'm Danie Laurel. Mask on, wash hands, stay safe, Philippines. We are One News.